Hey guys, it's Masatonic. 皆さん、こんにちは。バイリンガルハルキストのマサトニックです。Sure, I'm a bilingual harukist. A harukist means someone who loves Haruki Murakami's work very much. And this is an English version of my book review or book guide of Haruki Murakami's works. Especially in this video, it's about his first novel, Hearthewindsing. In this video, I'd like to talk about this book as basically for first reader to the Haruki Murakami's book, basically to the someone who want to Haruki Murakami's novel. So at first, I'd like to talk about the overview of this book. This, like I said, this is Murakami's first published works. It's if you had knew Haruki Murakami's background as his public history. It's in the United States or somewhere outside of Japan. Maybe it's not his first published books actually. Maybe his first book was a wild sheep chase, I think, but his debut novel or his first book in Japan is this one. Hearthewindsing. Of course, and this one also published a few years ago in English as well, but it's not how to say as his debut novel. But as you might know, Haruki Murakami is a very famous writer through the whole world. And then, so the publisher tried to publish his whole volume, I guess. So, but anyway, this is the first novel. This is the first novel which Haruki Murakami had written when he was 29. Do you know that when the time he had written this book, he was not a professional writer, of course. It's come to think of it. It's of course interesting. But at that time, he ran his own jazz bar in Japan, in Tokyo. So as you might know, he has a passion for music, especially jazz and classical music. And then the reason why is he simply liked that kind of music. So when he was young, he ran his own jazz bar. So actually, maybe nowadays it's not so much how to say extraordinary thing running his or her own how to say favorite type of music bar, right? If you like classical music or if you like rock music, you can run that kind of shop. That is not the extraordinary things. Of course, not the average thing, perhaps, but it's not the extraordinary things. But at the time, Japan, back in the 1970s, it's extraordinary things, I guess, I dare to say, because majority of Japanese people, especially at that time, most people after graduating high school or graduating university, they started to work as a office worker, so-called in Japanese English, salaryman. But that's a usual case. But Haruki didn't do that way. He was much more individualistic person, very much individual. So of course, when in his interview, he said about at first he thought about entering some company, some media company. Actually, it was some TV company, but he just gave up. He thought this is not a place where he belong, where I belong. He said in the interview, and then he just gave up entering the so-called office. Instead of that, he started to run his own jazz bar, and then in a couple of years, that his how to say so-called business is doing quite well. Gradually, numbers of customers increasing, and then that jazz bar has a specific customer, and then some of the jazz musicians really like it, and visit the cafe and play the jazz music as a live concert. So his business is quite doing well, but at that time, someday when he was 29, At the time, his shop located center of Tokyo, near Jingu Stadium. That is a kind of baseball stadium. That was his neighborhood, and so when he had a free time, his usual habit is just go for a walk to the stadium and watch the baseball game. Especially he like so-called daytime game, and with drink, of course. And then one day, he went to Jingu Stadium as usual, and with drink, he had enjoyed the baseball game, and some player hit a ball. King. At the time, he thought, "Oh, I can write a novel." What do you think? This is the things. It's a very famous episode for Haruki fans like me. And then at the time, he thought something he can write, and also he wanted to write at that time he thought, and they went to some shop and he bought uh, a pen and some paper, and he had started to write novel. And that precise, that particular works is this is it. Here's wind sing. In Japanese, 風の歌を聞け. Yeah, it's literally meaning. It's a direct translation here, the wind sing. Actually, this title is originally from Truman Capote's some short stories, which is called a Shut a Final Door. And that among the in that novel, Truman's novel, there's some line which featured the wind and sing, and then he inspired that line and he named after it, and then he had titled his first novel. This is the title here, the wind sing. It's a quite nice title, isn't it? And so that's the episode. And also another interesting episode is at first he had written this novel in English. Did you know that? Of course, he can write English. He can use English because as a literature reader, he's very how to say very much energetic reader of English novel, especially American literature. Like I said, I mentioned Truman Capote and Francis Scott Fitzgerald, and also Ernest Hemingway, and including also Thomas Pynchon, and that kind of so-called American literature giants is his were his literature giants or literature idol to Haruki Murakami, and that's why, of course, he had said he had started to read that kind of works at first in Japanese, of course, but when he was a high school student, he started to read that kind of American literature in English. As a Japanese kids or Japanese English learner, I thought that is amazing because as you might know, the how to say language as a language, English and Japanese very far from between each other. English and French, or French and Italy, or Italy and say as a kind of Romance language, it's not so far from each other because it's originally belong to the same language family, so-called Indo-European language trees. So, yeah, as a Japanese, I can only imagine. But if you can speak or if you can use English to learn French or Italy or such kind of Indo-European languages, it's much more easier compared to Japanese people learn English, or vice versa. As a English native speaker, a majority of you, very difficult to learn Japanese because the distance is huge. So, but still, Haruki Murakami can do it because he like English literature. The reason why he had a tendency toward such an English literature is like some other episode. he has his own reason. But I just skip it that the explanation. But thing is, he very familiar with English language, but still he can read English book, and then he can speak English. But writing English novel or writing novel in English is a totally different thing, right? You know, just using some daily conversation like a travel, let's say when you go to travel, it's just say hi or just ask people to location of station. It's not so much difficult thing. You can do it. Of course, I can do it in English. When I've been to the US, I can ask people to, oh, where's Central Station, etc., etc. But if somebody ask me, hey, Masatonic, why don't you write novel in English? No way, I can't do it. Of course I can't. So, but still, he did it. He did, because there is some reason. The first reason, of course, he like English, but main reason is that as a Japanese speaker, or how to say, as a native Japanese, Haruki Murakami, he thought writing something in Japanese is too much natural for him. What the thing that too much natural means? He thought he should have his own writing style, the way of writing. But as a native Japanese, when he writes Japanese prose in some way, that writing style is something like somebody like as a Japanese novelist like Natsume Soseki Natsume, or Dazai Osamu, I don't know, or Yukio Mishima, or etc., etc. But he didn't like to be someone, he didn't like to be some Japanese novelist, because that's just an imitation. It's just a, how to say, so he thought it's not his, not own his novel. He won't be original. He won't be his walk his own way. So in a way, he thought he had to find out his own writing style. And in order to find his own original writing style, he had started write a novel in English. It's interesting, isn't it? And then, so with English, of course, there is compared to Japanese knowledge, he had a very limited English vocabulary. So when he had expressed some feelings or some story, the vocabulary is very limited. So of course that story should be the story should be simple. So that works. The way of writing works, and then he started to write novel in English, and then after that translated from English to Japanese. And then through that procedure, he find his own style, right? As an English speaker or as a native English person, you might think Haruki Murakami's the web writing or writing style is very unique, very original, but his originality or his uniqueness is very much more drastic to Japanese reader, because his Japanese web writing is very unique. It's how to say, we Japanese didn't speak that way, like Haruki Murakami's character's way. We can't speak that way. So, and then we can't, we didn't write a sentence, or how to say, sentence like his way. When we do it, you just imitate him. So, in a way, it's, at least to me, it's a very unique experiences. Just reading a story, but what is this? I never read something like this kind of Japanese writing, because it's very unique. It's like something like a translated uh, things. It's like something, some novel which translated from English to Japanese, something like that. But it's not just translation thing, but he has his own, how to say, style. That is very amazing. So in order to find that his originality, he had to start write a novel in English. So that's the episode which featured, which related to his first novel. So that's it. So, and I'd like to talk about some brief summary of the story. So I try to no spoiler because this is a book guide basically for as a first reader. So the main character protagonist is some guys. His age is 20, maybe 29, because it's or just a later late 20s. It's something like Haruki Murakami himself at that time, and then that is a protagonist. And then also another character, some guy, a friend of friend of protagonist, which is called Rat in Japanese Nezumi. It's very weird because he doesn't have a name. Oh, of course, in the book he does have a name, but his name or how to say, characters in this novel, everybody doesn't how to say have a name because Haruki Murakami uh, did not give them a name, only a nickname like Rat. Yeah, and then other character is a girl, very unique. Of course, she doesn't have a name also, and then very unique characteristics because she only have 4 fingers in her hand. So the Boku or I protagonist, 29 years old, and also his friend Rat Nezumi, and also a girl who has 4 fingers. This is a main character in this novel, and then this book has a style or how to say structure. Protagonist I remembered some episode 8 years ago as a 29 years old guy. He just remembered 8 years ago some summer stories. So that kind of how to say structure this novel had. And then when he was 21 or about 20, so I mean 8 years ago in this novel, and he had some episode with Rat and with the girl with 4 fingers in August, in summer. So that's it. That's a basic structure and the basic story of this novel. All right. All right, and then I'd like to talk about my favorite things of this novel. Or in other words, I'd like to talk about why I love this book. First thing is rhythm, or in other words, or style of his writing. It's very, like I mentioned, it's very unique. And then one characteristic of his writing, that this or novel or his works has very unique rhythm. And then this rhythm make me feel very, say, comfortable. Reading Haruki's work is very comfortable to me. It's very unique experiences. And then just reading his book, to me, basically in Japanese, of course, it's nothing like the, say, reading Natsume Soseki or reading Akutagawa Ryunosuke or reading Hemingway, reading Paul Auster. It's nothing like that. Reading Haruki Murakami is very unique experiences to me. Even when I read in English, the how to say rhythm is also in common to with Japanese original one. This is very unique. And the second thing is blank space. What's blank space? I'd like to say here is this novel is how to say is not a very how to say it's very difficult to convey. This novel consists of so many episodes, and each episode is not so long, or very small, or very short. And then so episode episode A and episode B and episode C. And between each episode, maybe some other episode is there, but he didn't write it about that. There. So in other words, between each episode which was published, maybe there are some hidden episodes in it. And the reader can imagine what's the hidden episode between each chapter. Or maybe there are some episodes in it, and so many critics or researchers studied about it and then published about what's hidden in this story. And then maybe some answers already found, I guess. And then, of course, I have my own, or how to say, knowledge of the what's hidden inside it. But this is not. This is for a book guide for first reader. So I never mentioned about what is hidden. But still, I'd like to say about one thing. You can guess or you can imagine when you read this book the first time. Maybe you might think, oh, I don't know what's going on, what's happening. It's very hard to say. There are so many blank spaces between each chapter. So maybe you can't tell what's going on. But if you read carefully, you can guess, you can imagine like some connection between each characters. Oh, maybe he and she, something like that. It's of course it's not a mystery, but still you can read it as a mystery, well, like mystery at least. And then you can find it when you Google it, or you can read, I don't know, in English, how to say, such a researcher book published in English. But at least in Japanese, there are so many Haruki related books was published. It's like something explanation book. What's hidden in this novel, or what's the meaning of this metaphor, something like that, blah blah blah. Of course, there's no only way to read novel. There are so many the way of reading, and then such a how to say interpretation is up to each readers. So there should not be one just simple way of reading, or simple, maybe that kind of simple answer should not be given. I think that's way. And also Haruki Murakami's thought, maybe that kind of finding an answer is not a way of how to say truly enjoying a literature, but still I think try to find such a hidden meaning or hidden stories, one way of interpretations or perceptions or enjoyable reading, I guess. At least to me, it's very enjoyable. So, that is about blank space. You can imagine what is hidden in the story, right? And the other thing is beer. In Haruki Murakami's work, almost every book, every novel featured alcohol, especially beer in this novel. So many cases, protagonist and rat drank a beer. So I'd like to quote some very famous line from book, The Hearthewindsing. So I read, "The rat and I had spent the whole summer as if possessed, drinking enough beer to fill a 25-meter pool and scattering enough peanut shells to cover the entire floor of Jay's bar to a depth of 2 inches. So amazing, isn't it? 25-inch meters per equivalent to the amount of beer they drank at that summer. Of course, it's exaggerated way, I guess, but still, a huge amount of beer they drank. So reading this kind of expression make me feel drink beer, right? So after finishing this novel, always I'd like to drink a beer. So I think this is one magic power of literature have, or some sentences have, make reader doing something, right? That is my favorite things. And I'd like to talk about a few things about this novel, which is written in this slide, books and music. there are, as a Haruki fan or so-called Harukist, there are so many things I'd like to talk about because I'm Harukist or in very huge fan of Haruki Murakami. But one thing, not one thing, but there are a few things I can't help talk about is books and music. In Haruki's work, there are so many books featured, especially classical works like Hemingway, Fitzgerald, or Dostoevsky. Where in this novel featured Derek Hartfield. Do you know who he is? Actually, so sorry for it's a only spoiler of this in this video. Derek Hartfield is an imaginary novelist. There's no such a he is not exist in this real world, I guess, perhaps, or he might exist. But anyway, but still, in this novel, he featured Derek Hartfield's quotations. Few quotations is there, so it's very unique, right? And then, so I'd like to quote some part. So I'd like to read. Hartfield says this about good writing. Writing is, in effect, the act of verifying the distance between us and the things surrounding us. What we need is not sensitivity, but a measuring stick. From What's so Bad About Feeling Good, 1936. So this is a quotation from Derek Hartfield's book, The Imaginary Book, by imaginary author. That is very interesting way, and it's very how to say, not good proverb, I guess. Very nice expression, and then it's at first when I read this book and this quotation part, I thought, oh, maybe after finish this book, I mean, Here's Winding, I should have read Derek Hartfield's book, right? So because this is so unique, and also not just to feature the quotation, and also Haruki Murakami write about Derek Hartfield's biography in this book. It's interesting. So reader tend to believe, oh, there is a novelist. His name is Derek Hartfield. I think this is also another, how to say, magic of novel, I guess. And also music. There are so many music featured in this novel, but swing music is very popular. The Beach Boys' California Girl. California Girl is very, very famous. And then when you read this one, you can guess why this is very important. And also Miles Davis, Gary Calico. Yes, Miles Davis is a very, how to say, of course, famous jazz musician. And then Haruki Murakami was very inspired so much by him. So many times he featured about Miles' record as well. And then this is my personal episode. When I read this novel, these three music is related to some episode. Main character protagonist had bought her these three records in record shop where the girl with four finger had worked for. And then, yeah, when I read that episode, I think it's kind of cool. The how to say, selection of these three music is very unique, isn't it? The Beach Boys are 60s surf rock band, and the Miles Davis, it's a emperor of jazz music, a legendary jazz musician, and also Beethoven, classical giants. Wow, what a combination! I guess I said wow. And then actually, sometimes one day I bought for Miles Davis this album, CD album, in my case, as a gift to my friend's birthday. So in a way, you can enjoy it. Yeah. And then about Beethoven is also very inspired Haruki Murakami, and then especially piano concert. In his latest short stories, actually it's not translated in English. This video had recorded in 2020 September 10th. And now his latest work is Ichininshō Tansu in Japanese. In English, first person perspective. It's very unique title, isn't it? But that is a collection of short stories. And then during Ichinisho Tansu, there is some work which is titled Charles Parker Plays Bossa Nova. Amazing title, isn't it? So for someone who not familiar with jazz music, Charlie Parker is a legendary jazz musician as Miles Davis, and then but he had passed away in 1950s, and then but after that, the music genre bossa nova is in fashion in 1960s. So at that time, when bossa nova is very popular, the Charlie Parkers already had passed away. But in this, how to say, novel, Haruki Murakami imagined, what if Charlie Parker had survived in 1960s and influenced by a bossa nova and make a record of bossa nova music by Charlie Parker. And then the protagonist of that novel write her musical record review of that imaginary album, which is named Charles Parker Plays Bossa Nova. Very interesting story. I hope this amazing story should translate it into English, and then English reader can enjoy it. But anyway, in that novel, in that novel, Charlie Parker's featured in the protagonist's dream. Amazing story going on. And Charlie Parker said there's some music always lingering in his head. And he mentioned about Beethoven's piano concert. In that case, it's not a concert number 3, but concert number 1, but still same Beethoven's piano concert. In a way, his very first novel, which was written almost 40 years ago, he mentioned about Beethoven's piano concert. And also 40 years later, he had written a very new novel. And then he also mentioned Beethoven's piano concert. So I think to him, Haruki Murakami, Beethoven's piano concert is very meaningful and also very inspired him, right? So, and of course, I like Beethoven's piano concert number 3, of course. And then in this novel, Hearthewindsing, pianist is Glenn Gould. So Glenn Gould is an amazing pianist, very genius pianist, and then also very, how to say, influenced to Haruki Murakami as well. Right, that's it. So as you can see, this is a bilingual Harukist channel, but a minimum bilingual. I shoot it almost same content in Japanese in advance. And then this is the English version of it. So in a way, which means bilingual. But also, I'd like to read both Japanese version and English version in turn, some very fast part of it. So in this English one, at first I'd like to read English part, and after that I'd like to read same part in Japanese, right? So here the wind thing, chapter 1. There's no such thing as a perfect piece of writing, just as there's no such thing as perfect disappear. So said the writer I bumped into back when I was a university student. It wasn't until much later that I could grasp his full meaning, but I still found consolation in his words that there's no such thing as perfect writing. All the same, I disappeared whenever I sat down to write. The scope of what I could handle was just too limited. I could write something about an elephant, let's say, but when it came to the elephant trainer, I might draw a blank, that kind of thing. I was caught in this bind for 8 years. 8 years, a long time. If one operates on the principle that everything can be a learning experience, then of course, aging needn't to be so painful. That's what they tell us anyway. From the age of 20 on, I did my best to live according to that philosophy. As a result, I was cheated and misunderstood, used and abused time and again. Yet it also brought me many strange experiences. All sorts of people told me their stories, then they left, never to return. As if I were no more than a bridge they were clattering across. I, however, kept my lips dipped tight, and so the stories stayed with me until I entered this, the final year of my 20s. Now, I think it's time to tell my story, which doesn't mean, of course, that I have resolved even one of my problems, or that I will be somehow different when I finish. I may not have changed at all. In the end, writing is not the first step towards self-healing, just a tiny, very tentative move in that direction. All the same, writing honestly is very difficult. The more I try to be honest, the farther my words sink into darkness. Don't take this as an excuse. I promise you, I've told my story as best I can right now. There's nothing to add, yet I can't help thinking, if all goes well, a time may come, years or even decades from now, when I will discover that myself has been salvaged and redeemed, then the elephant will return to the belt, and I will tell the story of the world in words far more beautiful than this. Well, so I'd like to read this same part in Japanese as well. 風の歌を聴け。第一章。完璧な文章などといったものは存在しない。完璧な絶望が存在しないようにね。僕が大学生の頃偶然に知り合ったある作家は僕に向かってそう言った。僕がその本当の意味を理解できたのはずっと後のことだったが、少なくともそれをある種の慰めとして取ることも可能であった。完璧な文章なんて存在しないと。しかし、それでもやはり何かを書くという段になると、いつも絶望的な気分に襲われることになった。僕に書くことのできる領域はあまりにも限られたものだったからだ。例えば、象について何かが書けたとしても、象使いについては何も書けないかもしれない。そういうことだ。8年間、僕はそうしたジレンマを抱き続けた。8年間、長い歳月だ。もちろん、あらゆるものから何かを学び取ろうとする姿勢を持ち続ける限り、年老いることはそれほどの苦痛ではない。これは一般論だ。20歳を少し過ぎたばかりの頃からずっと僕はそういった生き方を取ろうと努めてきた。おかげで他人から何度となく手痛い打撃を受け、欺かれ、誤解され、また同時に多くの不思議な体験もした。様々な人間がやってきて僕に語りかけ、まるで橋を渡るように音を立てて僕の上を通り過ぎ、そして二度と戻っては来なかった。僕はその間じっと口を閉ざし何も語らなかった。そんな風にして僕は20代最後の年を迎えた。今僕は語ろうと思う。もちろん問題は何一つ解決してはいないし、語り終えた時点でも、あるいは事態は全く同じということになるかもしれない。結局のところ、文章を書くことは自己療養の手段ではなく、自己療養へのささやかな試みにしか過ぎないからだ。しかし、正直に語ることはひどく難しい。僕が正直になろうとすればするほど、正確な言葉は闇の奥深くへと沈み込んでいく。弁解するつもりはない。少なくともここに語られていることは現在の僕におけるベストだ。付け加えることは何もない。それでも僕はこんな風にも考えている。うまくいけばずっと先に、何年か何十年か先に救済された自分を発見することができるかもしれないと。そしてその時、象は平原に帰り、僕はより美しい言葉で世界を語り始めるだろう。Okay, that's it. So, did you enjoy it? This is my first recording of the Haruki Murakami's book guide. So, I'd like to make more volume going on and on. So, please check it. See you. Bye.